I want to go ahead and introduce myself and everybody else who's on staff on this call today. My name is Alexandra Zerzan. I'm the current Minnesota Green Corps member serving with Metro Blooms. My service term will end just here in a couple of weeks, but I'm really excited to stay. I'll be staying on through this cohort to continue helping with the coaching support for Launch to Legumes. So I'm excited to work with you.
And boy, aren't we lucky to have you, Alexandra. And my name is Elena Merklowitz. I'm the Environmental Education Program Manager at Blue Thumb and Metro Blooms. So a lot of what I do is support the various educational programs and projects that we do here. So I'm really excited to be talking with all of you today. And we also, Megan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep, my name is Megan Reich. I am the Communications and Program Specialist here at Blue Thumb and Metro Blooms. I'll be helping out with a lot of our grantee communications by email, by the helpline, helping out with reimbursements. So yeah, and with that, I'll pass it on to Dan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Shaw with the Minnesota Board of Water and Solar Resources, a senior ecologist with the agency and the program coordinator.
Yeah, we're really excited to have them all on this program, on this call today. I am going to quickly go over some kind of organizational things, and then I'll hand it over to Dan to kind of introduce the program. But we get this question a lot. It can be a little bit confusing with the Launch Legumes program. The Launch Legumes program is a program of the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. And when it started, they contracted with Blue Thumb to help manage the individual support grant part of the program. And Blue Thumb is the educational and like statewide outreach arm of Metro Blooms, which is a nonprofit organization here in South Minneapolis. So you'll see all of our names and these logos pretty much everywhere on our communications, but we just want to clarify what that actually looks like. As we're going through today, we'll do a quick kind of review on what the program looks like. We'll talk about what the roles and expectations are for coaches, and then we'll leave some time here at the end for you to ask us any questions and give you any updates that we didn't really get to in the presentation. But to get us started, I'm going to hand it straight over to Dan.
All right, thanks, Alexandra. Just want to thank everybody for joining today, and thank you for being coaches for the program. Launch to Legumes started back in 2019. We had funding from the LCCMR, the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. And right from the beginning, the program has been focused on supporting pollinator populations and essentially building a movement to protect pollinators across the state. So the initial funding was through the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. We had a second phase of funding from that same source. And then more recently, we've received funding through the State General Fund for this program. So we've been very fortunate to get additional funding, which is helping us to maintain momentum for the program. We have a few different components of this program, and this has been the case right from the beginning. We developed a public education and outreach campaign. And this was intended to build support for pollinators, just raise awareness for the public about what they could do, and partly to inspire do-it-yourself projects. That was a big part of this effort. We realized that we could fund projects and fund quite a few projects, but then also inspire a lot of other projects. And that's been really rewarding to see with this program. Another key component is the demonstration neighborhood projects. These are bigger grants that local organizations apply through an RFP to do projects and work with local residents across geographic areas. So we're really focused on building corridors with these efforts. And there's been a real focus on benefiting the rusty patch bumblebee with these projects. We are expanding across the state and starting to focus on additional insects that are at risk because we have so many that are in decline right now. And then individual support grants. These are grants of $350. And this is the part that the coaches have been involved in. And so it's the funding that's received in addition to technical resources, coaching, and other assistance that's provided along the way with the individual support grants. And we're looking at probably increasing that $350 going into spring. So that'll likely be changing with our spring cohort. Also, from the beginning of the program, we've had 4 different project types that we've been using. And that's been helpful to give options for residents. And it's been helpful if they've had ordinances that may not be real friendly to larger plantings. So we've had pocket plantings, native trees and shrubs. There's a wide range that are beneficial for pollinators, pollinator lawns, and pollinator meadows. And the pocket plantings have been really helpful to have, and we've had planting templates that go with those. We have, I believe it's around 30% or a little higher of new gardeners that are participating in this program. So these smaller plantings have been helpful to give them an option, and they can start small. They can always expand it into a pollinator meadow if they want, but it's been partly, a real benefit of having coaches with all those new gardeners that are participating in the program. So it's been very helpful to have you all involved. And with the program, so we have the $350 cost share. Some of the requirements of the program include having the projects be maintained for at least 3 years. We hope it's always longer than that. Using locally adapted, local origin native vegetation, with some exceptions. We try to have 3 blooming species for each season. Just a quick note on those exceptions, that's partly the pollinator lawn plantings, could be like white clover, could be self-heal, which we don't have a local source right now. Some cultivars of trees and shrubs, and we'll be looking at that going into the spring cohort too with the eligible cultivars of trees and shrubs. Another requirement, protection from pesticides with the plantings, then submitting before and after images, providing itemized receipts, and detail about the purchases. And then we also ask them to map their project. We have a map that has bees on it that shows the locations of projects for lawns and legumes. There's a 25% match requirement, which is monetary or in-kind work that they can do with their projects. And there's eligible supplies, which can be compost, mulch, edging, but not making up more than 30% of the total reimbursements. We really wanted the focus of the projects to be on planting the vegetation. And so most of the costs we want focused towards the vegetation. We'll be looking at these ratios a bit too going into the spring cohort. So I think that's my last slide. So thank you again. Be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm just going to go through a quick kind of rundown of what the fall 2023 timeline looks like for the grant this year. Grantees were notified on July 17th. We tried to move that up a couple weeks from last year to give just a little bit more time to people to plan their projects and get started. We'll have our first kickoff webinar for grantees next Monday, and then the following week we'll do a repeat of that same webinar. And grantees have until August 1st to confirm their grant. And so once we have all those confirmations in, I can start working on matching coaches with grantees who requested them. My hope is to have those emails all sent out to you by August 11th so that you can reach out to your grantees shortly afterwards. We'll be doing another workshop series kind of those last couple of weeks in August, maybe the first week into September. Just covering the kind of basics on what a grantee would need to know for successfully completing any one of those 4 project types that we talked about before. And we'll have some really amazing guest speakers coming in to help speak to that. this last season was, I think, the first time that we were able to host a kind of a mid-season check-in just for coaches, and I really enjoyed it. I hope you all did too, those of you who were able to make it. We got some really great feedback, and I think it was a really great opportunity for you to talk with each other and for some of our newer coaches to get some assistance or just kind of hear how everyone else works with their grantees. So we'll be hosting another one of those again this fall. September 28th is the planned date, so put it on your calendars now. I really hope to see you there. It'll just be another Zoom call. And then the final deadline for projects for this fall is November 30th. So all reimbursement requests and supporting documents regarding the projects that grantees put in are due on November 30th. So with all of that kind of information, let's go ahead and just jump over to what the role of a coach really is and what that's going to look like for you as you participate in this cohort. Our staff is really excited about this program. We're very dedicated, but you're seeing the majority of us on the call right now. We're a really, really small group trying to give as much assistance as possible to thousands of Minnesotans across the state. And so we really can't do it alone. And that's where we ask our coaches to step in and help. You're kind of this bridge in helping just answer questions for many of our new gardeners who this is their first time putting in or ever working with native plants. And also this kind of a bridge for sharing that knowledge and experience that you have that can be really, really beneficial to gardeners who are maybe a little bit trepidatious, I guess, about putting in their first planting with this grant. So the things that we ask you to do as a coach is really just to come prepared to share, prepared to listen, and prepared to help just kind of cheer your grantee on and encouraging them into knowing that they can do this project and to actually doing it themselves. So a couple of the ways that can be really beneficial for doing that is getting familiar with the program, knowing what the eligible expenses are, because grantees often have questions about that, helping to clarify that. And we have a lot of resources that we've created and that we're constantly updating to try and make it as clear as possible. But grantees will still want to talk to their mentor on the project to say, am I really doing this right? And so knowing that and being able to answer some of those questions is really, really helpful. It's also really helpful if you can help kind of guide them through like identifying and knowing what is a native plant versus what is a cultivar, and how do you select for that early on in the process when you're planning and designing your garden. A lot of our grantees end up submitting for plants that we can't reimburse for, unfortunately. And so for those that do get matched with a coach, we just hope that you can help be our echo in telling them it must be native plants that they're putting in the ground. But regardless, when you are speaking with your grantee, you're probably going to have questions come up that you don't know the answer to, or maybe it's your first time encountering that. And our ask is really that you just use your best judgment to help guide residents. Speak from your experience, speak from your expertise. That is really, really beneficial for people to hear. And if you aren't sure if this is something new, we are always here to help and to answer those questions too. So we put together a really great coaching handbook that kind of lays the foundation for what you need to know and how to answer questions. But we also have our helpline available for any programmatic questions that you or your grantees have. And as we'll talk about later, we've also built out this online community, the Hive, that you can access to just kind of crowdsource more of that information on some of those design questions and things. That being said, we also try to set expectations for our grantees to understand what they can expect from their coach. And first and foremost, we tell them, you are volunteers. You are volunteering your time and out of the kindness of your hearts to help them with these projects. And so they should not expect to be, hiring you as a contractor or something. You are not the one going out and getting the project in the ground. most of our coaches in surveys from the past have told us they spend about 2 to 3 hours on each grantee they're assigned throughout the course of the grant period. And so what that typically looks like and what we tell grantees to expect is you might get one longer, more in-depth kind of check-in with your coach towards the beginning of the season while you're still in that planning phase. And then a couple of chances throughout the rest of the season to either email or call to ask a couple of questions or just check in that you are in fact making progress on your project. One of the other things that we do to try and give you some autonomy in how you communicate with your grantees is grantees do not get their coach's information until coaches reach out to them. So it is your responsibility as a coach when you get that email from us with their contact information to reach out within the first week or so and make that first contact so that you can say, you know, this is when I'm available, this is how I'd like to speak, like would be best for us to communicate, whether that's over Zoom calls or phone or email, things like that. I do want to say we had quite a bit of trouble last grant period with emails from coaches going to grantees spam and then them not getting in contact with each other. So we will be also providing phone numbers for grantees to you from the beginning this time around and hopefully help mitigate that. But one of the other really important parts of the program is that grantees, we tell them to expect all of their coaching to be done virtually. There are a couple of reasons for this. One, I think that is really clear to people is the program really got started right when COVID came through and was really limiting our ability to meet in person. And so we wanted to build the program out in a way that all of the coaching and technical assistance could still be given virtually. And that remains true. And so all of our grantees know that meeting in person with their coach is an exception to the rule and not the expectation. That exception is wholly within your hands. If you find out that your grantee is, you know, behind the alley from you and it would be just as easy to walk across the street and see their site in person, and they are comfortable with that too, you can make that decision amongst yourselves. But the backbone of our program is really that all of the coaching be done virtually. And the last thing that we just really want to make clear for our grantees and for our coaches again is that you don't have to be the expert and you're not the like sole voice to this program. You are really there just to encourage grantees that they can do this with a little bit of help to kind of guide them to the resources that we've already created or maybe some that you know about that might be helpful for them. But if you don't have all the answers, that's okay. We've set up other ways to get that information to them. So again, if there are questions that you don't know how to answer, you can direct them to the Hive or to the L2L email helpline, and we will be happy to get to those. So kind of jumping back a little bit to being a coach virtually and what that ends up looking like. We've had a lot of experience with our designers and in our own workshops doing these kind of site consultations virtually. And so we can speak to the fact that they do work. You just have to be a little bit comfortable with the kind of tools that are available to you. So a couple of options that you have looking at properties virtually, if a grantee is we generally share their addresses with you and if a grantee is open to kind of looking at this together on Zoom, you can pull up either the county GIS map for any county in Minnesota, or you can just use Google Maps. The really great thing about the county maps is that the pictures are generally taken before the leaf out in spring, so you get a full picture of what their property looks like. Google Maps, sometimes if they have a lot of tree cover, you might not be able to see anything on the ground. But then when you're sharing your screen in Zoom or other video platforms, there's often an annotate or a draw feature that allows you to kind of go on to the screen and mark different areas where you think, you know, this could be a really great spot for a garden, or kind of troubleshoot, this is how the water flows across the property, things like that. We don't have enough time to go through all of those things today. So I will say that in the coaching handbook, we have a video of one of our staff members walking through this specifically. Highly recommend you just take a peek at that. Because this ends up being a really, really useful tool for these virtual site consultations. And then the goal for the program, as Dan had said, is really in supporting our at-risk pollinators. And so some of the things that we set up as like guidelines for the plantings are really aimed at reaching that goal. The plantings should focus. We have specifically here the rusty patch bumblebee and the monarch butterfly. Those are two really easy ones for people to identify with and focus on, but they should be supporting all of our pollinators. And so we have plant lists available with preferred plant species on the Blue Thumb website. They specifically pull out some of our native plants that are most beneficial to pollinators, and they'll even mark some of these ones that are most beneficial to our specialist pollinators, like the monarch butterfly that requires milkweed species to host their larvae, and some of the other ones that are really beneficial and are most likely to draw rusty patch bumblebees as well. And then to the point of needing at least 3 blooming species in each kind of time period of the year, this point is really just to make sure that we're providing that the habitat we're creating is providing high quality nutrition resources throughout the time period that our pollinators are active. So with rusty patch bumblebees, they're big, they're fuzzy, they are well adapted to having a little bit of a chill spring, and will still come out a lot earlier than some of our other pollinators or you know, butterflies that people think of, things like that. So making sure that grantees are planting with blooming species throughout that whole period to help support them is one of the guidelines for the program. And our plant lists and design templates that are available on the website, they all take that into account and will list species that kind of fit into that. So it's a really great way to make sure that they're hitting that goal.
And while it is the overarching goal of the program to, you know, get more pollinator habitat in the ground, the way that we do that is making sure that grantees are reimbursed. And one of the biggest hurdles we've had with that is, you know, grantees accidentally buying cultivars instead of natives, and that has been a recurring, you know, issue, I would say, and that's understandably so, because it's very, very difficult as somebody that maybe has never like navigated these sorts of you know, plant purchases before. So a big way that you can be very, very helpful for to your grantee is just to really making sure that they know the resources that we have to help them identify cultivars versus natives. And so we have a new guide that isn't quite ready yet, but will soon be, that really will talk kind of step by step through how a grantee can make sure that they are purchasing a native plant versus a cultivar. You know, and once again, there are some exceptions to that rule, and that will be on that guide as well. And then just a reminder that always encourage your grantee to just like take lots of photos, take photos of their receipts, and if they don't have an itemized receipt, just to make sure they take photos of the plant tags. But anyway, that cultivar guide will be available shortly, and it will be featured in an email that will be going out and also on our website. Other resources that we are continuously updating to help really guide your grantee to success is that we have a bunch of templates on our Blue Thumb website. And those are really, really helpful if somebody is like, what do I even do? What is the first step? That really can help, like, just help you to, that if you show those resources to your grantee, that can really be helpful in holding their hand through the process. And we also, once again, have the Planting for Pollinator Habitat Guide, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, but just really plugging that all the time. Another resource that is somewhat new to the program is we have the grantee guide that is just on our website that really just goes step by step through the different parts of being a grantee and to really ensure that they will be reimbursed. And we also have been making updates to our plant finder tool. So just make sure to direct your grantee to that as well. It should be very, very useful. And another thing that we have that I'm sure you're also familiar with is our Resilient Yards online learning series. As of last year, basically, is when we first released that, and it has recorded videos about our resilient yards and alternative turf workshops. But in a few weeks, we will be releasing another part of that, which is very exciting, which will be the Resilient Shorelines online learning course. So check that out in the next few weeks. That will be a whole new different set of information that grantees can check out. And another really useful resource is the Native Nursery partner list that we have, because that is always been another hurdle for grantees, is okay, I know how to identify a native versus a cultivar, but where can I find the natives? So that list should be really, really helpful for grantees to find different, it will clarify which nurseries have different kits for sun and shade, where they can online order native plants, and nurseries that are pretty compliant with the program, and as in having itemized lists of plants on the receipts. And also in these native nursery partners, they often have a lot of in-house expertise on native plants. So definitely direct your grantee to that resource as well.
So we're coming back around to the Hive, which I mentioned earlier. This is our resource to try and help build a community within the cohort. And so we have this community that is connected to our online learning series. The interface is very similar to Facebook, but it's totally removed from that platform. But it's essentially a space where grantees can go, they can ask each other questions, they can share about their progress as they're going along, and they can try and connect with grantees who are doing similar projects within their regions in the state. We were really excited to see people start to share as we did this for the first time in the spring. And so we're hoping it continues to be a really useful tool for grantees. Another place where they can go and just get some feedback on their project as they're going through the process. Coaches, I will say that your participation in this could be really excellent, especially if you have a grantee who maybe didn't need as much support as you were expecting. Sometimes they only have a question right at the beginning of the season, and then you're like, okay, off you go. And so in those situations, if you are comfortable on these kind of online platforms, jumping in and checking to see if there are any questions that you can answer, I think would be really, really helpful. We as staff go through this every business day as well to make sure that questions are getting answered and the appropriate information is being shared. But we really want this to be a space where more knowledge is being shared, and you can learn from a variety of people who have experienced this in their own lives. So would definitely encourage you to check this out if you find that it calls to you, or if you have a grantee who maybe just didn't need as much support later on in the season. There are a lot of grantees that we unfortunately can't assign directly to a coach, and this is kind of their first stop to try and get some of that assistance instead. We also host a separate community that is specifically for coaches. We typically will go into that, and I will post just different program updates or event updates that we have. I will say that we are constantly getting new coaches who have never done this before, and many of them have been, and maybe some of you have been, successful Monster Legumes participants in the past, and you just want to continue being involved with the program, and maybe don't have as you think you don't have as much experience as some of the other coaches. So we've tried to create this community for that communication between coaches. If you're running into a situation where you're like, I'm just not really sure what to tell my grantee here, maybe another coach could help. This could be a really great place to go. Otherwise, as you said before, you can also always email us, and we're happy to help with that too.
And I wanted to just also add one more thing about the coach, well, the Hive in general, is that was developed largely with the idea of wanting to really have this be a movement and to have it be something that feels really collaborative, because ultimately doing these things, we're most successful not being in our own little bubble. And so when it comes to the Hive itself, that is a really useful tool for directing your grantee if they have like questions, once again, planting and plants and just different questions along those lines. But when it comes to something that's really programmatic, definitely encourage your grantee to shoot those sorts of questions to the L2L helpline. That way we can sort of differentiate or where staff should be looking at where staff should be answering more questions versus crowdsourced information should be answered like plans.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Mhm.
And I should say, like, I think we saw, I want to give a shout out to this and a congratulations to everyone, because I think we did see some of this like community building really helping this last season be successful. Our completion rate for this spring was close to like around 70%, maybe even a little bit above, which is huge for the program. That is a huge accomplishment, and it certainly could not have been done without everyone trying to build this community where we can share this knowledge and encouragement to grantees. So thank you to all of our coaches and for your participation in that. It's huge. I will just give another plug here. We've covered a lot of material in this webinar, and it will be recorded and posted on our website. But also a lot of the same information is available in the coaching handbook, and you can find that at any point on our website. So go ahead and take a look at that. It'll give you a really great idea of kind of the basic knowledge that you need to be able to share to grantees throughout the cohort. So before we take your questions, I just want to give a couple of final shout outs. One, if you haven't already signed up to be a coach, I don't know how you got to this webinar, but make sure that you have on the Blue Thumb website. That's our first kind of point of contact with you to make sure that we know how many people you are comfortable working with, what your experience is, and if you have any geographic restrictions. That being said, though, that information can be really hard to update for us year to year. We just kind of take that first time you sign up and hold on to that. So we also have a form that we will be putting in the chat for you to go to and confirm your participation for the fall. We ask you to confirm your participation for each cohort in the event that, next spring you happen to be going on a 3-month-long cruise. We don't want to assign you to grantees who then you will not be able to contact. So it is kind of repetitive questions, but it's really important to me that we just confirm all of that information and make sure that it is correct and that we're assigning you as many people as you feel comfortable working with and trying to match you with who you want to be working with if you have any geographic restrictions. Of course, we also just want to make the plug, if you know anyone else who you think would be a great coach, or someone who's really obsessed with native plants, please share this opportunity with to be a coach with them and tell them about hopefully your good experiences to convince them to join us. We are never able to meet the request for coaches that grantees have, and that is largely because we are constantly being able to support more and more grantees, which is fantastic, but we can always use more coaches. So please just share that opportunity out with anyone in your community that you feel like would be a good fit. And also share about the Legumes program generally. We are currently accepting applications for the spring 2024. And going forward, as Dan had mentioned, we've got some funding now for the next few years. And so we will be looking for more people to apply, to continue to show that Minnesota residents have this momentum and they want this program to continue. So I encourage any Minnesota resident to apply for the grant. And I would love if you could share that opportunity with anyone that you know as well. Going forward, if you have any questions about the coaching program, about Lunch Legumes, I am your specific coaching contact. You can reach out to me at any time. My email is here on the screen. It's also pretty easy to remember. If you remember, I work at Metro Blooms and my name is Alexandra. So of course, at any point, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer those questions. Again, we will be connecting people with coaches on August 11th at the very latest and going through November 30th. And we really can't wait to get started with that.